Hi and welcome to Lecture 8. In this lecture we'll discuss Bundler and how Bundler lets you manage gems inside your Rails application. So if you go to bundler.io, you'll see that Bundler basically provides a consistent environment for Ruby projects by tracking and installing the exact gems and versions that are needed. So it lets you specify the gems for the Rails application, and the way you do that is you specify that inside the gem file. And this is the preferred way to manage gem dependencies in Rails, because Bundler is able to resolve a lot of dependencies and it tries to make everybody happy. So for example, you have gem 1 that depends on certain other gem with one version, and gem 2 that depends on that same gem, maybe with a little bit of a different version. Bundler is going to try to make both of those gems happy. To use it, all you do is you just run bundle install to install new gems, or you just do bundle, which is the same as running bundle install. And if you want to modify a version of already installed gem, you do bundle update instead of bundle install. You could also instruct Rails in the gem file to only load certain gems in specific Rails environments. So for example, you do group development and test to tell it that these gems are only going to be available in development and test environments, but not in production environment. So which version of a gem gets installed? Well, if you don't specify anything, you get the latest. You could also specify an exact version or an approximate version of a gem that you want to be installed. So for example, in this case you get the latest. In this case you get an exact version. In this case you get something greater that's 1.0, even if it's version 4 or 5 or whatever the latest is, past this version. You could also specify lower and upper bound. So for example, in this case you're saying greater than 1.1 and less than 2.0. Now, the reason you do this is that a lot of times when gems or when software in general goes to the next version, they might break certain features. Whereas if they're just updating the version, let's say 1.2, 1.3, they're usually not going to break the API. And because this is so common, there's also this operator, which is called the pessimistic version constraint, which means that you are pessimistic about the next version not breaking something, and therefore you want to lock in to only use a specific range of versions which do not include the next big version. And the way this works is that, the way Bundler figures this out, is that it drops the final digit and then it increments the digit to get the upper limit version number. So in this case it drops 1 in this case, and it increments this to be 2.0. So basically these statements are equivalent. You could either do it this way by specifying the exact range, or you could say, just use the pessimistic version constraint, and the way it figures this out is that it drops the final digit and then it increments the first digit to get the upper limit less than that limit, which is 2.0. Bundler also loads the gem. It doesn't just download it from the internet. So as the application starts, it actually requires that gem. And sometimes the name of a gem to require is going to be different than the actual gem name. So for example, this used to be the case of SQLite 3. The gem name was called one name, but when you required, you actually had to require something else. So you could specify that to a bundler. And the interesting part is that it's so modular that you could even use a different version of Rails. So let's say you're using version 3 and then you want to upgrade to version 4. All you have to do is just specify a different version in your gem file and then run bundle update, and that's going to update your Rails to a different version. Now, you might have other issues when upgrading, but as far as strict version usage, this works to change your versions. One more thing is that the gemfile.lock is the file that actually has the exact versions, and that's a file that gets updated when you run bundle update or bundle, depending on if it's a new gem or if you're updating an existing gem. One last thing, bundle exec. Sometimes you'll see people running bundle exec rake or bundle exec rails. And the reason for that is that what bundle exec does is that it uses the executable of a gem, for example, Rails or rake, that is specified in the gem file of a current app to use when you're running bundle exec. So what I mean by that is that, let's say you have 3 or 4 different versions for, let's say, the rake gem specified. So which one is it going to use? Well, it might not be so deterministic. So the way to specify an exact version is, or the version at least that you are specifying in the gem file, is to use bundle exec rake or bundle exec Rails, and then you know for sure that you're getting the version that's in the gem file. So in summary, bundler manages gem dependencies and it loads up the gems on application startup. What's next? Next, we're going to try to integrate the HTTP party with Rails, since now we know how to do that by using bundler.